Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In this video I will show you guys that I built a V8 hypercar in Scrap Mechanic. But the V8 hypercar I made is just the tip of the iceberg, so I will show you guys on how I get to build this hypercar. In the SMTC Discord server, Kine hosted an event on where we are instructed to build a piston-powered hypercar. Now, in a hypercar, you would obviously think of power, track times, technology, and all that sorts of stuff. And obviously, Kine added a list of racetracks that will be timed. Now, the requirement for the hypercar seems to be pretty strict about it, but it also makes sense. With the first being vanilla only, which is obvious, but things like blueprint editor is allowed. The car must have at least 200 km per hour top speed, which is only achievable with maxed out electric engines without stacking the bearings. I can only use 5x2 wheels, which are big wheels, and 7x1 wheels would have been better, but I feel like the top speed limit will be higher. 16 pistons are only allowed for the engines, and the car has to be fitted on the tracks that it will be tested on. And some tracks are quite narrow, which is a bit concerning, but I think it's okay. Now obviously normies will be using pressure piston engines since they make around 800 horsepower or even thousands of horsepower, and it's lower complexity. Now in this kind of event, I knew that I have to be different and more relevant to newer players for the sake of this video. So I procrastinated for about a week, then I finally started to get ideas for the hypercar. So let's get on with the first idea. The first idea was a Kine engine and then a ratchet engine hybrid. Now you may have heard of Kine engines, but a ratchet engine? Well, a ratchet engine is basically a normal piston engine with a pulsing clutch. I don't have a good explanation about this type of engine, but it can be found in Densav's cars. Oh, and subscribe to Densav's channel. He also has a channel like mine, so please subscribe. So anyway, I recreated the one that Densav has, and I managed to get around with decent power. And as for my Kine engine, I mended them together. With Kine knowing that I would do it, he advised me to not do it. But here's where the problem starts. The hybrid system did not work. I wasn't surprised, but it's all part of the trial and error. So I came up with another idea, is to just use the ratchet engine. Now why did I use the ratchet engine instead of the Kine engine? Well, since I was way too overuse the Kine engine, like I used it way too much, I guess I have to be different this time. However, there's also another problem with the ratchet engine. The thing is, it likes to spin in different rotation. Like it's literally unpredictable to know where it would spin, whether counterclockwise or clockwise. So I knew that I had to ask Densav for help, which is the creator of ratchet engines. But asking for help didn't really help me that much because it took him about a few days to respond. And so I got bored, and by the time he finally responds to my help, I had already came up with this. Now this hypercar has a V16, well not a V8 because it has double the piston per cylinders, so whatever horsepower you usually make with a regular V8, which is around 220 horsepower, I assume this thing makes around 440 or even more horsepower. Like it's basically double. It has torque vectoring, it is using all-wheel drive, the gear ratio is about 1 to 4, which means whatever RPM with my engine, which is around 300, it's basically 4 times to the wheel. And the engine seems to be pretty strong to handle that because of the insanely fast acceleration and the top speed being 220 km per hour on regular terrain and 246 on smooth terrain. Since my output from the transmission is about 1200 RPM, which is the same RPM for the pressure engine. Now you will think that I still don't have a chance on pressure engines. Well, think again, because my output from the transmission is about 1200 RPM, which is the same RPM for the pressure engine. You may think that people would increase the gear ratio for their pressure engine. It's basically gonna be useless because according to Kine, they are gonna be traction limited no matter what they do. It's gonna be useless on the track and it's gonna be unreliable as heck. I know what you mean. Pressure engines have like 800 horsepower or thousands of horsepower, whereas my engine only makes 250 or around that. I mean, with the right power to weight ratio, you can literally match with them. Now you may think that the car I made only requires a body. Well, it's got another problem. The car would literally shift to the right whenever I try to drive on a straight line. Well, technically this car was made around in the month of June, which means this car is not straight. Just kidding. I once again have to ask for help. So I had to ask Dens once again for help. And finally he responded 2 hours later instead of 2 days. I asked him to hop on my game, but the problem is he isn't available until the 19th of July. And the deadline is on 21st July. Well, does that mean it's game over? Well, he told me to ask Cheese, which is another expert I knew, so we hopped on VC and I showed him the problem. And he didn't even have to join my game, and all he did was use his eyes and brain and told me that my transmission isn't balanced. And so he told me how to fix it, and it turns out the transmission acts like a suspension glitch depending on how you built it. So thank you so much, Cheese. I really truly appreciate that. So and he also told me that the car was way too laggy and I should use a V8 instead. I insisted on that because I knew that I would lose half my power and torque. And he also told me that the gear ratio is too high and that I should be reducing it. And I ignored all that, and so I finally started to make the body panel. And so I made the car light as much as possible, so most of the car is now made of cardboard box. And now the car's weight is only around 500 kilograms. Now before I show you guys the car, I just want to tell you that I am actually saving up for a new GPU. Now you can help me save up my new GPU if you click on the subscribe button, as well as liking the video and maybe sharing this video to your friends. Now I know that the car is ugly, but seriously, admit it. The car is cool because it's literally 2 tons lighter than the new BMW M5, and it's only 50 kilograms heavier than the lightest current production car. But despite all that, my top speed has been reduced, not by a lot, but I lost around 10 to 20 kilometers per hour. So I reduced the gear ratio. Now it's down to 1 to 3, which is only 3 times. So I lost like 200 RPM, but it still has a top speed of like 205 kilometers per hour. But it also significantly increased my acceleration because I went for a lower gear ratio. So the car being submitted for the event, it's just around the corner. And so I've helped a friend of mine to develop another car for the event. And while we were in the same world, we were curious to see whether if my V16 is rather useful or not. So we downgraded the car from V16 to a V8. Well, no visual changes, but holy shit. The car's top speed was increased from 205 to 212, and on top of that, acceleration wasn't much that affected as well. Well, this happened due to an increased FPS from 20 to literally more than 60 FPS on my 10-year-old computer. Why? Because sensor detection deteriorates along with the physics if you have lower FPS, which is a massive letdown for Kine engines and conventional engines. And so if you are looking for a V8 hypercar, well, I named the car Agila Mark 1. So Agila Mark 1 is gonna be your car. If you want a V8 hypercar, well, go ahead and get this. And so I submitted the car for the event with only an hour left, just like how I submit my homework during the pandemic. So maybe about a few days later, so here is the results, and Kine finally released the results. So I'm surprised that Densav managed to actually make a car despite having only like few days, but I still lost against them, which is weird. So anyway, here are the lap times. So the same Ryan managed to get about 3:53 on the big track, which is the XXXL track, and the lap time for the country roads is about 7:09. Well, according to Kine, it offers the most advanced tech in engineering with modern dual pressure engines and retaining decent drivability. And if you guys don't know what engine this thing uses, it also uses a pressure engine, but this time, this pressure engine is literally from the Zenith, the one that you see in Kine Under's Zenith. So the second place is basically Densav and Ripsaw. Well, they have been collabing for quite a few events, and so they have A regular pressure engine, which is just a single piston pressure engine, which is, I assume it makes around 800 horsepower, I guess. It has a lap time of 325 on the XL track, and it has a lap time of 750 on the country roads. It's literally the best handling, and it's the best tuned vehicle. It's but the thing is, they made a race car, not a hypercar. Well, I mean, to be fair, if you have a hypercar and you don't race it, you're literally a menace. I mean, that's why they made a race car in the first place, which is, I guess they would consider it hypercar. Anyway, so here is me in the third place, as always. My lap time for the XL track, which is 341, and that is literally 12 seconds faster than the Seyran, despite the lower top speed. And my country roads lap time is 746, and I am 4 seconds faster than Ripsaw and Densav's car. I mean, wow, I literally beat them on their disadvantages, which is, I guess, impressive, but Kine said it's a bit unfortunate that it has a V8 and a lacking tech compared to the positions above. But the handling is actually really good as it comes with proper throttling tech. I mean, that's the thing that I'm really proud of, because the engine that Kine is saying, it's a bit, I guess it's lacking tech, according to him. But because pressure engines are technically better, I know, but the power to weight ratio of this thing is literally insane. But as I said, my car took literally over the advantages of their car in some tracks, like Dens's wagon being slower the country roads, and the Seyran in the XSL track, despite having higher top speed than my car. But yeah, I guess this is how I made the V8 hypercar or supercar, or the pressure engine killer car, or whatever you want to call it. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Goodbye.